Okay, so it's a new year and Spotify is absolutely dominating the streaming platforms. The only one I would really compare right now is Apple Music and YouTube, if you still consider that a streaming platform. SoundCloud and things like that are really starting to become less important. And if you're not killing it on Spotify in 2019, I don't really know what you're doing. And myself, I'm going to be shifting a lot of my focus there. In the past, I primarily focused on SoundCloud as my main way of getting my music heard. But this year, I'm going to be going hard with Spotify. And I'm going to be telling you 5 different tips and tricks that I'm going to be using to grow my Spotify and that you can to grow your Spotify from ground zero and get a lot more streams. So without further ado, let's get into it. So tip number 1, and this is probably very obvious unless you're not very familiar with Spotify, and that's going to be finding playlists. So the lifeblood of Spotify is the playlist function where you as a listener can create your own playlists. Spotify as a brand can create playlists, or other brands can create playlists, and getting your music into a top playlist or even a medium one or even just your friends' ones is a way of getting your music heard and heard by many people. So the first one is going to be the Spotify curated playlists, and you can actually get your music in there quite simply. All you have to do is once you submit your song to your distributor, be it DistroKid, 1RPM, whatever it is, you can then go to your Spotify artist account. And once you have access to that, there's a page where you can actually submit up to one unreleased song to Spotify to consider for their curated playlists. I've done this before, and I've gotten a song on there and it gets like 30,000 plays just from one of their playlists. It's actually pretty ridiculous. So I recommend doing that for sure. Now, second is going to be personal playlists. And what you can do is when you're looking at playlists on Spotify, you can see the names of who has it. And oftentimes when it's a string of letters or numbers or something like that, it's usually a personal Facebook account connected to it. And when you click it, you can usually find out more information such as the name and image. And through enough background searching through Facebook, you can usually actually connect the person to that account, and you can start networking with these people to eventually ask if, hey, can I send you my music? And if they like it, they'll include it on their playlist. So I recommend looking for playlists that are usually in the same genre, have a pretty decent following, and then seeing if there's a way to connect with it if it's a personal account. Now, the third type of playlist is usually brands, and that's things like promotional music networks or even things like Coca-Cola or Pepsi. And a lot of brands will actually have ways of submitting to their playlist. Not if it's a Coca-Cola or Pepsi, but if it's if it's, say, for example, a promotional YouTube channel, they'll actually usually have Spotify playlists as well. And you can simply take their name, Google it, YouTube it, whatever it is, find this brand, and then find a way to connect with them and submit your music. Now, all of this has to do with your music being good enough quality, but let's assume it is. And then from there, once you build these connections, you can actually get your music in these playlists. So the first and probably the most important tip is going to be getting on playlists. Now, the second tip is actually going to be building your own playlist. Building a playlist and constantly adding to it has 2 great sources of value. The first is it's a way you can connect with your audience by having an update once a week with new music. It's a way that you can share kind of your personality, your personal tastes, and constantly deliver value to your audience. The second is if this playlist ever gets traction or gets a following, every time you put out a song and you add it to this playlist, you can get plays. So there's kind of 2 ways of going about it. You could either just do a personal brand one. So say, for example, myself, it could be like curated by Kermode or something like that. Or you could just do a more broad one, and I'm actually going to start one soon, and I'll tell you guys how it goes. You could do one like Dubstep 2019, and if you get enough traction with it, maybe you post it on forums, dubstep user groups. You can build a playlist consistently over the years, become a curator yourself, and then anytime you put out a song, you can put it in there. It's also a great way of networking with people, where if you really want to communicate with an artist, you could use it to say, hey, I have a Spotify playlist, you should check it out. I'll include your music in it. Not to mention, when you update it every week, you can tag the artists in it and maybe they'll check it out and check out your playlist as well. Now, the third tip is going to be using your socials. So you want to be as well as growing a Spotify, you want to be growing a Facebook, an Instagram, a Twitter. And what's really cool is platforms such as Instagram, for example, you can now go from Spotify, hit share a song, and actually share it straight to your straight to your story on Instagram, for example. And it'll actually have a clickable link where when someone's going through your Instagram story, they can then click it and go straight over to your Spotify. So if you don't have many plays, you're going to want to be taking people from other networks and getting them over to your Spotify. You're also going to want to be using things like Facebook user groups, Reddit, if you don't self-promote but have a friend maybe who wants to promote your music. And you're going to want to be getting traffic from elsewhere onto your Spotify to get those initial streams and those initial follows. So please take advantage of other social media. Just uploading your song, getting it on Spotify, and hoping that's enough is not going to be enough. So you're going to want to use your social media. Now, the fourth tip is using download gates. Now, if you don't know what a download gate is, I talk about it a little more extensively in my growing a SoundCloud tutorial. But if you don't want to check that out and you're just focused on Spotify right now, in quick summary, what it is if someone wants to download your music, they can click a link and have to pay you some sort of social currency like a follow or a like to actually access that download. Now, DJs still download music in this day and age, so it's still going to be very useful. So what you can do is you can get listeners from, say, Spotify or from SoundCloud, YouTube, things like that. Get them to click a download gate, but get them to follow you on Spotify or save your song on Spotify or save your playlist to their library. So that can be a great way to actually get people from other sources to give you social currency and follow you on Spotify. So I highly recommend taking advantage of download gates on other platforms to transfer people to your Spotify. I think that's still going to be very vital. And the last one is going to be using pre-save links. So not only do you have the ability to promote a song once it's out on Spotify, but if you're using, say, DistroKid or 1RPM or one of these distribution networks to get your song on Spotify, they'll often provide you with a pre-save link where you can get people to pre-save your music. So you can then come up with a campaign before a song comes out asking people to pre-save it on Spotify. And that way, when it comes out, it immediately gets saved and people will start streaming it right away. So this is just a really good way to, preemptively get follows, preemptively get people interested, and to constantly have your Spotify on people's radar, be it pre-release and post-release, where as a song's releasing, you're already getting the pre-save link ready for your next song, and you quickly transition into promoting that. So you're always going to have a Spotify link in your Instagram feed or something like that, so people are constantly being transferred over to Spotify. Because the hard part about Spotify is it's not really a social network, so you're going to have to get people from other sources, be it playlists on the platform or social media platforms other than Spotify. So it's kind of a challenging one that way, but once you get used to it and start to think about it, you can really start to get those initial plays, those initial streams, those initial follows. So that's kind of a beginner guide. I really recommend, if you're not on Spotify, this is the year to do it. You don't want to be too late to the party and miss your chance. It's already not the same as it used to be. And I know I was late to the boat. I'm only really getting into Spotify now. But I know this year I'm going to be going hard, implementing all the techniques I just talked about to really gain that following and grow my Spotify. So I hope you got a lot out of this video. My name is Kermode. Thanks again, and I'll be back with another tutorial. Peace.